I've seen doctors have really bad communication skills. Yeah, this patient has cephalohematoma of this, and the families are like, I don't know what that means. And I think part of communication is understanding who you're talking to.
So in the military, we call it Barney style.
Like Barney Fife?
No, the Barney, the dinosaur.
You see, Baby Bop? Please and thank you are like magic words.
Barney, you're being silly.
What did you say, punk?
When I don't understand something, I need you to break it down Barney style. Explain it to me like you're trying to explain it to a child.
And that's where the power is at, though. You know, when you don't explain things to people, there is a sense of, well, I understand this more than you do. We tend to revere people more if we don't really understand it, but we think the person is a good guy and stuff. My right side hurts. It's right up here. I think it's your gallbladder. It could be your gallbladder. It could not be your gallbladder, but you trust that person.
You're good at your job because you know how to do it. You're great at your job if you know how to teach others to do it.
Folks, your exciting new medical career, it's just been hit with a serious illness or injury that stops you from earning a paycheck just when you need it most. Check out what Jamie Fleischner of Set for Life Insurance said back on episode 176 about having disability insurance early in your career.
The real reason to get it early on is really twofold. One is to protect your insurability. So if you are healthy and you can obtain the coverage, you also pre-approve yourself to be able to buy more in the future. So down the road, as your income does increase, you don't have to answer additional medical questions. All you have to do is show that your income is increased and you can buy more benefits at that time. No medical questions asked.
Protect your income, secure your future. Check out setforlifeinsurance.com.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. It's your boy, Dr. Nee. I'm joined by Kiara. What's good? Welcome. How you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Stressed. I got a whole bunch of different things going on. Let me just quickly tell everybody, as I said in the previous episodes, sandwich generation here. I'm here. There's some people who are listening to the show, you know exactly what I mean. You're in that late 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s. You're taking care of your parents. But we got a big trip coming up. We're going back to Ghana, taking the parents there for an extended trip, maybe 3 months or so, and see how it goes. But it's a lot of pressure, right? When you're packing, not just for yourself, but you're also packing for your parents, and they can't really help you that much. And it's crazy. You know, it's just like you're trying to pack medication. You're trying to pack all these different things that you anticipate. Ghana has a lot of things that we have here, but sometimes from an electrical standpoint or from a tech standpoint, they have it, but it's just in a different voltage. So those are things that I'm trying to keep track of. We need some durable medical equipment, so that's going to be a pain in the butt to get packed, but we're almost there. And so that's going to be a trip that I think will be really fulfilling for me, but also really fulfilling for my parents, because as they get older, you know, I think that they've always, mentioned to me that they wanted to go back home. I think it came to a point where they just didn't know how to do that anymore, right? And they didn't know exactly how to verbalize it, more so than just saying, hey, I want to go home. So for me, the fulfilling part is having them kind of help them reach the finish line of, them coming to the United States, particularly my dad. He came to the United States on a boat, right? And then spent like 3 weeks on a boat going from Ghana all the way to Elizabeth, New Jersey, right? And from there, he ended up in New York and kind of made things happen. And then, my mother came shortly afterwards, and then, we kind of just, the Darkos just started populating the United States. And your parents are your parents. They got everything on lock, right? And then you start to realize as you get older, I started to realize as I got older, I'm like, oh, they really don't have this on lock. And, maybe about 15 years ago, I think the first time I really realized that I needed to take care of things was in fellowship. When I finished fellowship and I found out that my dad had prostate cancer, he was very nonchalant about it, but he also seemed like he was in the dark about things. And that was the first time that I had to change the trajectory of what I was doing on the basis of my parents. I've never had to do that before, right? It was always just, look, I got to go to school, just make it happen. And that's it. You get further and further away from your parents. That's just how life is. My dad did it when he was in his mid-20s. He left Ghana, came to the United States, a whole new world, and started. That's just what I'm going to do. But when my dad got sick, I was like, oh, man, I left fellowship early, actually, and came home and started doing locums. And decided I was going to stay home. And when I stayed home, I started looking at all the bills, and I was looking at all these bills that were not paid or these bills that were in arrears. My dad, he's very hard-headed, he's very stubborn, but he's a very proud man. He works very hard. So I was like asking my dad about all these different things, and trying to get an answer out of him sometimes could be really difficult. But basically what it boiled down to is that he was scared through this whole process. So I took him to his doctor, the urologist, and we figured out what the plan was going to be. We got a second opinion, and we figured it out. And I would change my locum schedule to make sure that every time he got his radiation treatments, I was there for it. And then I was able to make a plan with my sisters so that they can help him. And it worked. And that's really the basis of me kind of doing locums right out of fellowship, falling in love with, wow, like I can make my work wrap around my lifestyle. That's something I wasn't used to at all. So from that
do you think
point,
you would have been able to do that if you had gone the traditional route?
No.
Are you the only doctor? And you're the only boy, right? Your sisters.
Yeah, I'm the only boy. My sisters, my three older sisters. Out of my three older sisters, my youngest sister, she's a nurse anesthetist. My mother is a nurse, was a nursing aide. So in terms of medical background, kind of medical adjacent with my mother, and then my sister became a nurse, and then I became a doctor. And it's a little crazy. So then throughout that process, over the next several years, it goes from, okay, Dad, let me help you with prostate cancer, to Mom, Dad, I think, like even small things like I had a Jetta, a 1999 Jetta. So this is around 2012 now. I had a 99 Jetta. So I was like, when I started doing locums, I go to different states. And when I come home, like I rarely needed my car. But at the point where I gave my parents the car, it was like 135,000 miles on it. I had been through Kansas City, Jersey, Atlanta, Miami. I was like, just keep my car, right? And I just started noticing like just more and more like taking over with their lives, taking them to their doctor's appointments. And then even when I got married, same thing. Like it was just helping them more and more. And now it's like you start to realize like 10 years ago, you guys should have tried to move back to Ghana to kind of finish the circle, right? To kind of retire and stuff. But they just economically couldn't do it, or financially, or, just emotionally couldn't do it. So now we are finishing that. And I don't know how long they'll stay. They'll probably stay for several months and then come back. But we here, and we leave tomorrow, actually.
Well, tomorrow technically wouldn't be tomorrow when the recording goes out.
Yeah, but we ain't got to tell them, though. For everybody listening, tomorrow is that whenever it is tomorrow for you, that's when I'm out. So, but that could have been a week from now, or a week later, actually, or a week before. I don't know. So if anybody's listening, if you know what I'm talking about, let us know if you are part of the sandwich generation, or if you have similar dreams or hopes to like kind of help your parents out and you're not sure exactly what to do. But low key, the other thing too is we got a caseworker from my parents' insurance, and they helped us. There's this program called PAD, like the prescription. Basically, it's a prescription help for old people, right? Old, folks. And, my dad has a history of clots, and he takes Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. And that shit is expensive as hell, like a 30-day supply. Like those are the things that I've been helping my parents with and my sisters. Like when you think about like, there's this huge donut hole, right? Like where if you can kind of think of prescription coverage almost like a donut, right? There's a in between, right? Like there's a hole in the middle, and then before you get to the hole, there's like, the donut.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that part of the donut you can imagine is coverage, right? And then once they reach a certain point past that, once they keep, using medications, there's a hole there that doesn't cover anything anymore. And that came out, Medicare Part D came out when I was in medical school. So this is during Bush's time. This is Medicare Part D. And that was the big issue, is it provides a good amount of coverage, but there's a portion where if you go past a certain amount of coverage, like you're on your own.
Insurance has got to be the biggest scam ever. Insurance across the board, home insurance,
Listen,
car insurance.
a man woke up in the morning from his hotel room, left his hotel room, and was going to a meeting and got shot in cold blood on video. And nobody gave a damn about him. And it mainly is because he worked for an insurance company, right? He was a CEO of an insurance company. That is how bad the public sentiment is on insurance companies, right? And, like I said, like we value life. I'm a doctor. You're a basic human being. So you value life. But a lot of people are pissed off at insurance companies that ire, that upsetness when it's pointed to that CEO is like, whatever, People
Well,
rather talk about how good looking.
Let's not disregard
how
the
good
fact
looking the
that
guy
it
is.
happens in New York.
Hello? I've just shot somebody. I did it on purpose. Hey, shut up down there.
Where in New York in general, it's very much you didn't see nothing, you can't say nothing. You didn't hear nothing.
Word. But we saw this though. We
saw
it.
We saw it. We just not gonna say nothing. That's crazy because first of all, that's just New York culture in general.
Yes.
But even across the board, even if it had happened in another state, I feel like we've become so desensitized to human beings in general.
Yes, we've become a very voyeuristic type of world where we, in essence, want to watch the dumpster fire, but we really don't want to participate, right? Like you'll see people get into these fights, they get knocked out, someone is in a seizure, and like the camera is staying steady on the person, which means the person is still watching, still, keeping that camera on that person while the person is going through a seizure and stuff. Or, the whole thing with the woman on the train, the New York train getting put on fire. Like, this is crazy, but can you officially say that, like, let's say this was 20 years ago or 15 or 30 years ago, people would actually do something? I just think that's our nature, right? We just want to watch and see what's going on. That's the whole essence of rubbernecking, right? Yeah. People just want to see what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, I think the insurance situation is bad. And I think that, a lot of people, like when you think about insurance companies and what they do, in essence, they take a whole bunch of money from you, right? And you could be a state, it could be you as an individual or you as an employer or what have you. And they give you, whatever they give you back is less in value than what you gave them, right? So if you give them $100, they give you, in essence, $20 worth of coverage. That's how they make their profits.
Well, yes. And then, when you think about it, so the deductibles, like you're telling me in order for me to use the thing that I already paid for, I have to pay more?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because like, what are you doing with the money that I already gave you? I haven't used it in, let's say, I had insurance for 5 years. I haven't used it in 5 years. I need it now, today. And you're telling me that I have to give you more money. Like, what'd you do with the past 5 years worth of whatever I gave you?
Don't you see the big ass nice building? That's the tallest building in the city.
I know but it's like, that's what you're using the funds for. It's like, it's a scam.
Yes.
Insurance is a scam.
It's a legalized Ponzi scheme. I think that's the best way everybody can describe it. It's a legalized and a federally upheld Ponzi scheme. And at this point, it's too big to fail.
Yeah. So
it's crazy. It's crazy.
There was something I was going to say to lead us into the pit, but I know you had
before we get to the pit real quick, there is a email that we got from Dr. O. Let me read that real quick. So Dr. O has her own podcast, but she reached out to us, and this is a comment about the episode that I recorded with Dr. Jordan and his book about purpose. And he says, I hope your holiday season was rejuvenating and that the new year is off to a promising start. Just wanted to drop a note to say kudos to you and Renee on your latest podcast on navigating purpose. It really spoke to me as I prepare for a career transition and influence how I reflect on my meaning, the past, and purpose, the future. Keep up the great work. Take good care. Sincerely, Dr. O. So just want to give a shout out to Dr. O. She knows who she is. I hope you start your podcast. I wish you all the luck with that, or restart your podcast. I wish you all the luck with that. And that episode with Dr. Jordan Grummett, that was a really good episode. I think how like, I still find it really, like, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, the Joe Budden podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And they were debating, who is, like, what's a rapper's rapper? And what I mean by that is who's a rapper that when they rap and when they put out lyrics, like other rappers like aspire to get to, and they can quote their lyrics just like that, right? And I kind of look at it like in terms of podcasting, like, is there a podcaster that I listen to that I'm like, man, I just want to be just like that person, right? That part is very interesting, right? But with Dr. Jordan, whenever I listen to his podcast, when he comes on the show, whenever he writes his books, he's somebody that when I listen to him, I'm like, damn, man, like he is very good. He's an excellent communicator, right? Like he's really good at communicating, and he was able to communicate verbally as well as in a written form that, purpose is in two forms. And I'm going to give a book review very shortly, but he's an excellent communicator. And I'm glad that people really, like that show. So
I'm going to have to read the book. I need to work on my communication. I'm not even going to lie.
Communication is half the battle, yo. Communication is half the battle, Kiara, as you know.
I know.
I've seen it. I've seen doctors have really bad communication skills. Like I've seen doctors will talk to patients, families, and be like, yeah, this patient has, cephalohematoma of this and broken this. And the patients are just looking at them like, or the families are like, I don't know what that means, And I think part of communication is understanding who you're talking to. And it's okay to kind of just like make things a little bit more lay so that people understand. And it's the same thing with podcasting. Like, how can you express and reach the people who are listening right now and help them understand things like, I'm with you. I understand what you're talking about, and go from there. So, boom.
So in the military, we call it Barney style. So you know how
Barney style? Okay.
Yeah. Remember Barney? The
like
big
Barney Fife?
Barney.
Okay.
The dinosaur.
You see, Baby Bop, please and thank you are like magic words.
Are they?
They help people get along together, and that's a kind of magic.
Barney, you're being silly.
What did you say, punk?
Okay. I love you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know how he used to break everything down like, oh, this is, happy, and happy is da-da-da-da-da, and just break it down to layman's terms, like you're explaining it to children. That's how we say it. And it's like, I need you to break it down. When I don't understand something, I need you to break it down Barney style. Explain it to me like you're trying to explain it to a child.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Well, that's, I agree with you. I always say, so it's funny you mentioned that. I say, talk to me like I'm a fourth grader. Or actually, no, I say, talk to me like you're a 4-year-old. Like I'm a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Explain it to me. Even like my financial advisor, explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. I don't understand what you're talking about. Am I broke or do I have some money? Help me out.
Yes. I don't need you to tell me the technical terms. And, look, I didn't go to school to be a CPA. So I need you to explain it to me like a regular, basic human being.
Correct. And that's where the power is at, though. When you don't explain things to people, sometimes it's like there is a sense of, well, I understand this more than you do. And there is like we tend to revere people more if we don't really understand it, but we think the person is a good guy and stuff. That's just the way how it is. Like you go to your mechanic. If you go to your mechanic and they tell you something, like I'd say the majority of people, 99% of people, do not understand what the hell the mechanic is talking about. But if they seem like a nice guy or girl, they'll be like, all right, well, yeah, just go ahead and fix my CV joint that's probably doesn't need to be fixed. Right? Am I lying?
No, it's true.
You just trust them. You just trust them, and that's it. And
it sounds
the same thing
good.
works in doctor. Yeah, the same thing goes with doctors. Like you have someone who comes in, my right side hurts. It's right up here. My right side hurts. It's right up here. I think it's your gallbladder. And it could be your gallbladder, it could not be your gallbladder, but you trust that person to say, yeah, this is the reason why. Like you don't have the ability to review the test, and even if you looked at the test, how do you know to interpret that this is the reason why you're having pain? You just have to trust that person who's interpreting everything and has gone through school understands everything that makes you have pain in that area. It's scary.
I feel like there's a difference, right? So you're good at your job because you know how to do it. You're great at your job if you know how to teach others to do it.
No doubt. 100%. I agree.
If that makes sense. I don't know.
The ability for you to teach something is shows a certain level of mastery. So me and Renee would go back and forth about this in med school. Like when we would study together, I study well by myself. Renee, I don't know how she does it, but I would study on my own. And then right before a test, right? Let's say a test will come at the end of 6 weeks. So we would do what's called blocks, right? So you would study neurology or the brain or the neurosystem for 6 weeks. And in between that time, you would have some quizzes and some tests. But at the end of 6 weeks was the big block examination. So me and Renee, like the night before, we would go to another school. There's a library there that was open 24/7. And we would just study with each other and ask each other questions. And, she was just finishing being a teacher. So she would say, like, teach it to me like, I'm one of your students, or explain this to me like I'm one of your students. I'd get really frustrated about that. But what she was trying to help me to understand is that, well, I understand that you can memorize it and I understand that you understand it. But if you can verbalize it, speak it, and take it from what you see on the textbook to how I can understand it or help me to understand it, then you definitely got this. And that was the key for me, and as I said in the previous episode, med school wasn't that, I didn't have that many difficulties with med school in terms of the academics, the emotional, the financial things, those were really crazy. But from an academic standpoint, like, I don't know why, but it worked. And I'd do it again if I could, actually. It was fun.
I say it all the time. I say that about the military. I'm like, it was like the best, worst time.
Right? I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yo, it sucked, but I'll do it again.
You're at the top of your game.
Yes.
Yeah, you're at the top of your game.
No matter where you are in your career, you've seen patients your age or younger get seriously injured, have a long-term illness, or even have a mental health issue that affects their ability to work. Now, what if that was you? No, for real, what if that was you? Without disability insurance, how are you going to replace your paycheck? In episode 176, Jamie Fleischner of Set for Life Insurance explains why the best time to buy disability insurance is during your residency.
Most physicians acquire their disability policies during residency, and there's several reasons. First of all, when you're younger, you're able to obtain the insurance because they ask you a whole host of medical history. And so you usually don't get healthier over time. Usually you get less healthy over time. So when you're healthy, it's easier to acquire the coverage. Number two, it's also less expensive because it's based on your age and your health. You're not getting younger or healthier over time. So you're at the ideal time. The earlier you get it and the younger you are, the less expensive it's going to be.
So whether you're a resident or you're an attending, it's never too late to protect your income. Renee and I, we use Set for Life Insurance to find a disability policy that fit our needs and budget. So what are you waiting for? Check out setforlifeinsurance.com. Once again, that's setforlifeinsurance.com.
So with that being said, med school, when we're talking about it now, there was a Twitter post that came up.
This is a tweet back in 2024, right? That says, how does anyone survive the time between medical school and residency financially? Why does everyone say just take out a relocation loan? That's not the answer to this recurrent problem in the medical world. Well, I'm sorry, Dr. Amos, that is your problem and you got to deal with it. So basically what happens, guys, if you're not familiar, if you're in med school and you don't understand what this person is talking about, this is someone who probably has already finished med school and is in residency, or someone who's about to go into it. The point is this: there is a gap. Once you match at a place, right? So this is around your 4th year of med school. Once you match at your training spot, right? So you match, I think around February, March, something like that. I don't know. There's a lag, right, of about 3 to 6 months where like you have to be able to now secure housing. You may need a car. You may need to do a whole bunch of different things in this new city while you're still living in your old place, right? Here's my example. So I was going to be doing my residency in Atlanta, Georgia. I still lived in Kansas City, Missouri, right? So I was a 4th year. I was living in Kansas City, Missouri. I matched in residency at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. I was starting July, right? So now I got to find housing in Atlanta, which means I got to put down a security deposit, right? So depending on where you match at, that security deposit could be, a couple of stacks, right? Let's be honest, it's going to be a couple of stacks, right? 3,000 maybe. Then, you got to also come up with first month's rent, which is a stack, possibly maybe a stack and a half, right? Then, depending on the state of your car, you're going to need a car, or you may not need a car, or maybe your car may need to be fixed. You're going to have to move, right? I got to move from Kansas City to Atlanta, right? So I'm going to pack up the Jetta. with 120, 130,000 miles on it? Is it going to fit everything? I can't put a couch in there. Low key, I didn't have a couch in Atlanta or in Kansas City, right? But, there's things that I got to move and stuff, right? And remember, the way how I'm paying for med school, the way how I'm living for med school is off of a loan, a student loan, right? A refund check, right? The majority of that student loan went to go pay for my education, like tuition. And then whatever's left come back to me in a check. And that's how I pay my rent in med school. So the question is where are you finding this money to get that house or to get that apartment, all of these different things. And then not to mention, when you graduate from med school, you're probably graduating in May, right? Or June. So there's another month where it's like, what are you doing during that month of June as you start July? And then not to mention, don't forget, like when July 1st starts, when residency starts, you don't get a check July 1st. You might not even get a check July 15th. You might get a check like late in July. So that has been an age-old issue for decades, which is what do you do during that lag time? And lately, what people have been saying is take out what's called a relocation loan. And that could be like a private company where you go to like SoFi or whoever, and you go to that company and say, hey, yo, like I need a loan. Here's my credit score. Here's let me get like, I don't know, 5 stacks so that I can do all these different things. And then you got to pay it back and go from there. Or, what I did is you put it on credit cards. Some people ask their family, hey, mom, dad, or, my rich uncle or Kiara, let me borrow some money, and then they do that and they pay them back. Or some people just, they know that as they're going into their 4th year of medical school, they're going to need a lot of money. So they take a higher amount of student loans, knowing that they'll take the tuition, but the rest of the money that they get as a refund, they'll use that to kind of build up their coffers so that when it's time to get ready for residency, they have something to go. They're all not optimal, So I don't know the perfect answer, but I do think the schools, it's the school's problem, I think, and they should really help the students out, and they should make it easy for students to get relocation loans at a very low interest rate. And I do know for a fact schools can do that. Like schools can create almost their own type of loan programs where they're saying, hey, we'll give you a $10,000 loan and we'll make it like 1%. We're not here to make money. And you can pay that back over, 5-10 years and so forth. I think that's better. So I think
realistically,
that's the best
do most of the loans. So I know you obviously have your student loans, which you use to pay for your classes and whatnot. The debt that you leave school with as a doctor, is that majority school related, or is that because you have expenses that aren't being covered?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's both, but the majority of it is your tuition, right? Like tuition, the majority of your student loans are going to pay tuition. Okay. Tuition is $60,000, $70,000, some medical schools $90,000, right? Which means that you probably let's say for a year, if your tuition is $90,000, that means you probably have to take out for that year maybe $110,000 or maybe $105,000, right? Because you'll need $15,000 to live, right? So you take that $15,000 divided by 2, and that will be what you'll use for rent, food, and all those different things. Get a computer, stethoscope, textbooks, things like that.
How likely is it that there are doctors that do choose to work in addition to going to school at the same time?
That happens, but I tell you, it's a small percentage. So if you look at the stats right now, the stats show that the majority of people who are in medical school right now come from very privileged backgrounds. The majority of people in school. Yeah. So I had a part-time job. I was in the study hall, right? And I would just stay there making sure that people like check in and check out, and it wasn't real. But like to have like a real like part-time job, there's a notion in med school that if you're working in med school, like working like employed, gainfully employed, you're working your way out of med school, right? Because the amount of studying that you have to do is hella hard. Right. So if you have to put that on hold to go and do a part-time job or even a full-time job, or however you make it work, it's going to be really tough. So what you normally see is people will do like a full-time job or a part-time job, maybe during the summer breaks.
Okay.
Or if they have a job, it's something that allows them to study. But the amount of information that is thrown, like Kiara, I'm not joking. Like the amount of information that's thrown at you over a 6-week span or however it may be. It's crazy. Like the not even textbook, like notes. I remember I had like we would have papers, right? So the way how we did it, we studied based off of what we call systems, right? So the traditional med school curriculum is, all right, Kiara, you go to school and you're going to learn biochemistry, you're going to learn physics, you're going to learn chemistry, you're going to learn anatomy, and those are all like separate subjects. And you have to show mastery of that. And when you take a test, you're just taking a test on bio, and then you take a test on anatomy, and that's it, right? That's how you prove as you're moving through. What my med school did, which I think a lot more medical schools are doing now, and this is where I thrived, is let's relate all of that stuff to the human body. And that was a breakthrough for me. So for me, in college, I'm like, we're studying biochemistry, but I didn't really understand why it was important to understand biochemistry. Right. So you're trying to understand all of these reactions, but if you don't understand why you need to understand it, it makes it difficult to want to memorize it. So for us, it's like, well, the reason you need to understand this is how diabetes works. Or you as an athlete, you want to know why like your legs are burning at the end of a 400? That's biochemistry. This is the reaction that occurs while you're running. This is the reaction that occurs when you don't take your medications for diabetes. Do you see what I'm saying? So when they started doing that, it was just like, what? Yes, I understand this now. This makes so much sense, right? So when we study, let's say we're going to study the kidneys. Well, we study the anatomy of the kidneys. We understand the pathology, right? So what can go bad with the kidneys? We understand all these different things with the kidneys, and the amount of papers that we would get, like, would stack up binders like this thick. You can't close the binders, right? And that's a section. And then you do it times 12, right? You do the neuro, you do the kidneys, you do the cardiovascular, you do all these different things, like just stacks of information that you have to all understand. At the end of 6 weeks, you take a test and all that stuff. It's crazy. So to imagine having to study all that stuff and rinse and repeat all that stuff, imagine there's people who have families, kids, and then you throw on top of that, some people may have jobs. Like, I don't know how they do it. It's tough. It's real tough.
I'm actually wondering now. So because I'm not calling you out on your age or anything. I'm saying that things are different now, right? So everything is easier, in my opinion, right? Because I could just, instead of carrying around binders, now I could just create folders or sections, whether it's on my, Google Drive, Microsoft Notes, or whatever. How, and I'm hoping a listener can answer, but how do you think they study now? Is it like a control find thing? Like if I'm looking for a specific thing that I need to really focus on, can I just control find it? Because
I think
you're writing your notes.
Yeah. I think there's still a small segment of people who write their notes, but I think the majority of everything is electronic now. The question, though, is, there's studies that show that when you look at something on a screen, like, do you retain that as much as when you actually are physically reading on a piece of paper?
Absolutely not for me.
Yeah, for me, the same thing. So that's one thing that they have to deal with. But yeah, like they're not lugging around these big folders anymore, right? Like everything is on an iPad or digitally. And then like, how do you keep notes accurately, right? Like, how do you highlight? It's just, it's the resources are different, but I think the stakes are just as high. And one thing that they have now that we didn't have before is the amount of electronic resources that they have now to either test themselves, communicate with other people is just ridiculous, right? Like the tests that they have to test their knowledge. There's so many more tests that are available. There's so many more resources electronically that can help them understand the body systems and how the body works. It's really, it's phenomenal. I'm really happy for them actually for that, because I think it's better than how it was for us where we had to figure it out. So I think it's really good. I think you're going to get really well-trained doctors now, because now they can understand the full scope of things, because there's so many different ways to test your knowledge. So the question though is, how do you retain a lot of stuff? And I think just in general for education, like if you go to a college campus, like there's college professors who are saying that like because they don't have books anymore, or because they don't really write essays anymore, like the level of education or the their understanding of, the students' understanding is going down, but the students don't recognize that. And I just think there are certain things that you just have to go through that I think we don't let students go through, and they're missing out on it. And I do think writing stuff down and having to write an essay written out or even just typed out with your thoughts, there's something to be said about that. There's a certain amount of work that goes into that you can't replicate, but that could just be me saying, get off my lawn.
No, I don't know. I'm not that far behind you, but I agree. I do find it a little easier for me to write things out versus type them out. I feel like I understand it a little bit better. My brain takes, it's easier for my brain to process it as I write it in my words.
I think that, that kind of leads. Is that where you're going with this?
I was.
Yeah, I think like all of this stuff leads into what I've been watching and what I think is one of the best medical shows in a long time. Now, I'm only 2 episodes in, but I got my bootleg HBO Max account going. Nobody's going to know how I got a bootleg, but I got a bootleg HBO account. And you got one too, Kiara.
No, wait. I paid for mine. I didn't know.
No,
I need you to send it.
Who are you sharing your password with, though, right?
I am. I'm not going to lie.
Remember the Wild Wild West days, like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, when you could just share a password with like an entire family could have just one password of like 15 people just have one password.
I know, now they charge you.
I would have my family come by and like log in on my TV and be like, yo, just come in, like come watch TV on, just log in or whatever. And then they leave and I'm like, just give me the remote. Just give me the remote. Don't try to log out. Just go.
Yeah, I'm here messing with everybody's algorithm.
Right? Yeah, it's true. That's true, right? People can find out either what you are into, which could be, that could be a little crazy, or you just messing up their kids' algorithm. But this show, The Pitt, is no joke. It is, I would say if it'd be a show that if I had an opportunity to put out a show, this is the show that I would put out. Right. And The Pitt is obviously it's a play on words, but The Pitt is an ER. This is basically an ER replica. A more realistic version of the TV show ER that was from the early 90s into the, early 2000s that everybody loved. That's the show that inspired me to go into medicine. It's so close to that it has Noah Wiley. He's heading the show. But basically what this show is let's talk about what happens in the ER doctor's shift. And every episode is an hour of his shift. I'm only 2 episodes in. So his shift started at 7 a.m, I think. So hour 2 were like from 8 o'clock to 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. And you're basically watching everything that occurs. And in the show, he is an ER physician that is obviously he's got to be at least 10, 15 years in, but he's interacting with colleagues. He's interacting with medical students, residents. So this is obviously a teaching hospital. So there's residents there, excuse me. And it's a hospital that appears to be, one of those hospitals that's a public hospital where there's like just a lot of people with insurance, without insurance. There's so many different things that are going on. But what struck me big on this show is there's a lot of just like frank, realistic things that occur in medicine that I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out. There's a scene in there where he just talks about end of life issues with a patient's family. There's a guy who comes in, he's in his late 80s, he lives in a nursing home, and he's coming in with pneumonia, and now he has sepsis because of it, a really bad infection. And he has a advanced directive that says that he doesn't want to be intubated, he doesn't want to be on a ventilator, he doesn't want dialysis or anything like that. But, if he needed some IV antibiotics or some IV fluids, that's okay with that. So like, that's actually very, very vague what I just told you. It sounds like it's very clear, but it's actually very vague. So he comes in where he obviously needs antibiotics and he also needs fluids, but it's very clear that he doesn't want to be intubated. He doesn't want to be on a ventilator. So what happens when he comes in and you can give him antibiotics, but it looks like he won't leave the ER without being put on a ventilator. Right. And then what happens when kids get involved? So his kids are there and they're saying, or at least there's one sibling who's saying, I'm not ready for him to go. Please put him on a ventilator. And that's always the hard part of medicine, which is, what do you mean you're not ready for him to go? Like, your dad has already said that he wants to go under these circumstances if they arise. They have arisen. right? We understand that you're supposed to help him make these decisions when he can't, but he's already made the decision. So now this is almost like a push-pull type thing now. It's like, well, I get what you want, which is you don't want to see your dad go. But dad has already said what, in what capacity he wants to go. So that conversation is very clearly laid out in the show. They spend a good 10 minutes on that. And it's very black and white, and there's some gray areas in there, but it's very upfront in front of you. That I found very fascinating. And I think the public would be very interested to be or shocked to know damn, you guys just have conversations about that. Someone lives, dies, that's it. Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah, it is rough. It's rough. That's the type of conversation I have literally every day on the trauma service, because we see
I've
people
never
fall.
seen the show. I'm actually going to try it.
I think you'll like it. It's not salacious yet, right? So it's not like Grey's Anatomy where you're finding out people are sleeping with each other yet. There's a little bit of some people's previous lives that kind of show up on the show, but it's purely at this point, the first 2 episodes, purely medical, purely the interrelations that occur in a hospital, how people interact with each other, surgeons interact with ER docs, how administration deals with, ER. These things are very interesting also. But that's my biggest concern, is just what's going to happen if it continues like this. Will the public find it interesting after a while, or will they get tuned? Will they tune out?
Do you think maybe the Pitt was actually created for a specific audience, directly your audience, I guess, specifically?
That'd be really cool if it was, right? If it was, that'd be great, because I think if you look at the shows now that are on TV, like Chicago Med, Grey's Anatomy, that is definitely not for us, right? This is for the public. And the TV show has a job to do, which is we want to make money. So you got to make something that the public wants, right? And public likes to see sex, lies, and videotape. So you got to make it salacious. And it's extremely boring in a medical, in a hospital. I'll be very honest with you. I think it's boring. So they got to make it so that it's entertaining to people. So the fact that they're making this show very realistic, like I talked about in a previous episode, when for example, someone's heart stops, you do chest compressions, and sometimes you may have to shock the heart depending on what type of rhythm that you see. On ER, it was notorious. They would shock people on asystole. And on this show, they went out of their way, kind of going through the fourth wall, right? I was just saying, hey, we recognize that you guys used to kill us on ER for shocking people in asystole, right? But yeah, we don't shock on asystole. So they're making things very realistic on the show so that doctors and other medical professionals will be like, yep, that's exactly what happens, But it's still very realistic, I think.
I'm going to tell you
so
right
far, 2
now,
episodes in.
If the show is not for doctors, the fact that they even put that in there says a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it could be meant for doctors, because as a regular person, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and the audience probably doesn't care. But the fact that so many doctors or so many medical professionals hey, why are you shocking on this, means they were listening. But I agree with you. I think the public in general does what are you talking about? Just make this happen. Entertain me. So it's good. I recommend it, guys. Let's see how it goes. I'm not going to do a episode by episode review, but I think it's something that's worth, people watching right now. Let's see.
All right. So really quick, I want to have us update on the New York strike.
All right. So the New York strike, the folks in New York, they were going to strike because, in essence, let's just keep it a buck. There's a lot of turnover that occurs at these hospitals. There's not enough staff. So what ends up happening, the doctors who stay, the residents have to do so many things you have to do evaluations on patients, history and physicals on patients, but you probably have to end up a lot of these places, have to draw blood, have to transport your patients from the ER to their, room, or take them from the ER to the CT scanner, or wherever you may have to go. But it's a very taxing job. And what you end up finding out is once the hospital finds out that they can do more with less, they usually don't like to make moves to recruit more doctors or recruit more medical professionals because it costs them money. So if you can do the same work with 5 doctors when you normally need 10 doctors. Well, that's 5 less doctors you have to pay for. And those 5 doctors usually ain't going to say nothing and they're going to get the work done. Well, now doctors are speaking up and they're saying, look, like, I want to see my kids. I want to watch the Pitt. I want to go exercise. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't want to be here all day, or I don't want to be here all night. So you're going to have to find somebody else, or you're going to have to find more people, recruit. So that, in essence, was the gist of the strike, or the proposed strike. And New York has kind of stepped in, and Mayor Adams, who's got a lot of issues, Mayor Adams has stepped up and said that they're going to try to make this work, where they come together and try to figure out something in the middle. So at this point right now, the strike is not happening. So we'll see. If anybody who listens to the show is involved or knows a little bit more about the strike, write us and let us know, because we're very interested to know what's it like on the ground.
Well, with that being said, New York's not the only state that has had strikes. We know this.
Nope.
This seems to happen.
It's not going to be the last. It's not going to be the last.
I feel like 2025 pretty much started off with a bang. Let's talk about the Oregon strike.
So this one is nurses and doctors who are striking. Yeah, they're on day 7 of their strike.
As of the time of this recording.
They're saying that the system, or the people who are being striked against, are saying that they made an offer of a 20% raise over 3 years for acute care registered nurses, up to $5,000 in ratification bonuses for acute care registered nurses whose contracts, and increases for physicians that could exceed $20,000 to $30,000 for those working full-time. Providence also stressed that its typical nurse working full-time makes $125,000 per year, and that many full-time represented physicians already earn more than $300,000 a year. I think as the public, you have to, if you're reading this or you're trying to figure out why doctors are striking and you may not understand it and you may not have sympathy, you have to think about, like, why is that statement out there? Would you want to guess, Kiara, why that statement is out there?
What I want to make, I feel like it's trying to create, the way I'm reading it, perceiving it, is it's trying to create internal chaos. That's how I'm interpreting it.
I think you're onto something. I think it's trying to create external chaos. We see this in athletics all the time, right?
Okay.
So when you see basketball players or when you see baseball players, when they strike, right, they will strike mainly because, the union that they have wants to get certain types of things. Maybe they want to get concussion protocols, or maybe they want to get better health care, when they retire, or maybe they want a better pension, right? Or maybe they just want more, they want more of the cut of what happens when people pay their tickets, right? Usually it's like a 50-49 split. Maybe they want more of that, right? If you're in basketball, they want more of a split. Like, people are coming here to see me as LeBron James more so than they really want to come see the Lakers. I want money. F you, pay me, right? Those type of conversations occur. What we end up seeing from the public is, when you have those type of situations, the public oftentimes sides with the billionaires, not the millionaires. Right.
Okay.
So if you say that Shaq is making $30 million a year, but he wants to strike so that, he can get, pension or get health care when he retires, the public sentiment is, you make $30 million playing basketball. Like, how can you not manage your money so that when you retire, you have money to retire, right? And take care of your health care. Poor you.
Oh, I see your point. Okay, I'm following.
Right. But the public sentiment is never like, but these are billionaires who have the money to pay a $30 million salary to this person, and you're trying to be cheap and not give them this pension that, in essence, is not really for Shaq. Shaq doesn't need it, but it's for the person who's making maybe $200,000, right? It's for that basketball player who's making $200,000 or, $100,000. So I'm just making numbers up. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the question is when you have an opportunity to side with someone, the public sentiment normally sides with the billionaires, not with the millionaires, which makes no sense. So for me, the way how I perceive things like that, it's when they say things like that, they're saying, listen, you have nurses and you have doctors who are striking, but public, let me let you know, they're making $125,000 a year.
They're in the
or the
six
doctors
figures.
are making $300,000 a year. Why are they striking? Hint, hint, hint. It's not us. It's them. They're being greedy. Right. But they don't specifically tell you why. Okay, yeah, if a doctor makes $300,000 a year, but they're working on average 90 hours to 100 hours a week. What's the effective, like how much, when you break down the hours, is that really a $300,000 salary, right? If all your weekends are gone, how effective is that salary really, right? And I think that's the key, is most people think that, well, doctors make a lot of money, hence they either deserve to be abused, or, you signed up for this is on you, right? I think that's the sentiment usually. But it's never really a situation of, well, yeah, if you want to ask for more money, like go ahead and ask for more money. Because I think most people who, if they were working, like they would want to get paid more. They would want to get more
across the board. That's
right.
Anywhere.
But when you see other people, it's almost like a crabs in a barrel type thing. When you see other people who are making more than you, and even though they're in the same employed status of you, we tend to criticize them more than our bosses. And that part I don't understand. So I think that's the whole sentiment of that statement, which is basically, yeah, like we know situations are bad, but yeah, they're high paying complainers, basically. That's what they're saying. They're high paid complainers.
So that it makes it hard to sympathize with them or empathize with them.
Yes. So once you get the public not behind you, then the companies or the hospitals are going to win.
Well, realistically, from the outside looking in, just regular person, it's a little nerve-wracking when you read things like that. When you read that doctors and nurses are, one, working in like really shitty conditions, but also striking because they're being underpaid and they're understaffed. Because could you imagine, I mean, not from your point of view, because you're doctor one, and two, you're also locums. So you come in and you fill these spots temporarily, but from the outside looking in, could you imagine if I went to my doctor and they were on strike?
Yeah. Like your appointment tomorrow is canceled because your doctor is is in front of the hospital, in front of the clinic right now. Or imagine you go into your clinic and you see a doctor on the picket line. What you gonna say?
Like, you gonna be here like tomorrow? Should I reschedule?
Yeah.
Like,
what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, you reading my results? Come on. Like, I need to know if I'm, so.
Right. Should I pick up the sign with you? Or like,
right. Hey, listen, but these are big time things, because this is what's going to happen, right? Because as more and more doctors are employed, they're in essence high paid blue collar workers, and blue collar workers strike. It happens. It happens in the automotive field. It happens in anything. They're going to strike.
I think we've talked about this before, where I think a lot of people forget that doctors are blue collar workers.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think of
they don't
doctors.
forget. People do not want to think of doctors as blue collar workers.
Yes,
doctors do not. If I guarantee you right now, if when we put this episode out and people listen to this, they will have a major issue with that. And I will tell them, you are a blue collar worker. You are a blue collar. They know they are deep down. They are. They just don't want to admit it. Doctors are blue collar workers.
I think it just throws it off because of the white coat. I think that's all it is. But It is a blue collar job, and because we're so used to hearing blue collar means less than, like a lesser position, like a janitor.
Yeah, it does. There's that connotation. There's that connotation. There's a stigma that's with it. But docs, you're gonna have to accept that. I've accepted it. Like, this is a blue collar job, and that's fine. I work hard. I go to work. But there's a sense of, like, if you own your own private practice, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you are employed and you work for a hospital, you don't own your patients, right? Mm-hmm. You're wearing a coat that has your name on it, but has the logo of something else, right? Like your healthcare insurance, your disability insurance, your retirement, all that stuff is taken care of by the company. So in essence, what do you own, right? I mean, right? Like, you're a high paid, you're not an executive, because the executives, they make decisions about what happens with the hospitals. You don't.
So the hospital is essentially, the hospital itself is the white collars.
Absolutely, right?
And then
like
everybody
the
else is the
CEO,
blue.
the CMO, all those people that has C something before it, those are the white collar jobs. That's fine. But I do think that the doctors, the med students, they need to know you are entering into a blue collar job. It doesn't change the fact that this is still a dope job. It's just that you got to look at it differently. It's the same way musicians who come in now, like, they make shorter music. Why do they make shorter music? Because they realize that people's attention spans are shorter. So when they make music, they're like, why do I need to make a 5-minute track when I can just make a 2-minute track and still get the same accolades? It's less work. I get paid the same, right? Spotify stealing money from me anyway, so let me just make shorter songs and shoot to the top with shorter songs. Same thing with athletics, same thing, like, why do I need to play 84 games in the NBA when, like, I'm going to beat up my body? I'll just play 60 something. Or in baseball, like, all of these different things, people adjust to what the conditions are. And I just think that people just need to understand that that's the way you need to adjust in medicine. It's still great.
I think across the board, I'm seeing that in the newer generations, not necessarily whether they're older or younger, but just in general, things are changing. Because I did come across a feed, and I can't remember which. I believe he was a football player. I can't remember what his name was, but he actually opted to not play a game to be there for the birth of his child.
Oh yeah, I don't remember his name, but yeah, that was huge.
It's like, back then it was like, look, I got to play this game. Like,
yes.
I like to see it. I like that people are out there, whatever field it is, they're putting their foot down. They're like, no, I'm not missing this. Like, this is my thing. Yeah. Y'all are just going to have to suck the fuck up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I think there's this sentiment of, like, the company, like, they love me as much as they need me, basically, right? And once they don't need me anymore, then it's on me, right? So if you don't show up for your child's birth, if you can help it and you can be there, then be there, right? But, like, the notion of the game over, the birth of your child, like, I don't know. I think that sentiment is changing. So, I was there for my kids, and I can't imagine anything that would have derailed me from being there for my kids.
We have to remember that we're all replaceable.
Yes.
So if you die today, another trauma surgeon is going to get called up and be like, hey, we need you to come in. You know what I'm saying? If I die today, good luck trying to replace me.
Oh my goodness. Oh my damn.
Yo, Kiara, if you are irreplaceable, I'm telling you right now. Yes, you are. Everybody, I can't function without Kiara, so I'm just letting y'all know that.
But you get what I'm saying? Like, in the military, I'm like, I see people who are like, very gung-ho about, oh, I have to be at work. I have to be at work. My daughter's recitals today, but y'all need me. And it's like, first of all, they rotate you every 3 to 5 years. Okay, so you're not that irreplaceable because they literally have somebody replace you every 3 to 5 years. And if you go today, tomorrow they will fill your spot.
Right.
And that's across the board. Like, people forget that, like, you're not irreplaceable. I mean, I'm not irreplaceable. But other people are very irreplaceable.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that, or not me, but there's a famous YouTuber, Ali Abdaal, he said it, but I'm sure he got it from somebody else, which is, in the United States, in the healthcare system, it really is the system that's taking care of people as opposed to individual doctors. Mm-hmm. If you go to a third world country or a country where the system is not as robust as us, yes, it falls on the individual doctor to kind of take care and save people. You as a doctor in the United States, you're saving people, but it's really a system, a network that's helping. So, yeah, I think the expectations have to change. But, yeah, I do believe that, when this goes out, there's going to be people who are going to be angry with what I'm saying. But I do think if they take a moment to have some levity and think about it, they will come to their senses and be like, yeah, he's right.
No, we don't need them canceling us.
Nah, well, that's the best part about podcasting is, like, you can't shut us down. So, All right, Joe, we are at the end of the show. Docs Outside the Box. Once again, thanks again for listening to the show. Listen, we read every comment and review either on YouTube, email, or text message. So we appreciate everybody writing to us and letting us know your thoughts about our show, our comments, our takes, or what's going on in your life. And we'll share it on the show. And we really love to hear from you guys. You guys are really a vital presence on the show. And you're the reason why we keep, coming up and showing up. So we appreciate you all. So Kiara, let's bid adieu to everyone. We'll catch everybody on the next episode of Docs Outside the Box, y'all. Peace.
Bye.